Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to finish the beginner fly fishing series and we're going to focus on flies. In this video I'm going to talk to you about the different types of fly and some of the flies I like to use. We'll cover dry flies, wet flies, nymphs, streamers and some salmon flies. And if you're enjoying this content, please feel free to like, subscribe and check that notification icon. Now let's start with dry flies. These are designed to float on the surface of the water, which would imitate an insect that has either landed or hatched on the top. So thinking about things like mayflies, midges, dragonflies, all those different types of fly. And they get their floating or their buoyancy through the materials that are used. So you can see here we've got some deer here. If I can get these ones untangled, we've got some foam that have been used. And we also have some sort of CDC, which allows that kind of buoyancy. When fishing a dry fly, typically I would be using a floating line, and I would predominantly be using a dry fly in the sort of summertime. When you can see that the fish are feeding on the surface, you'll be able to see the fish kind of nibbling away or going straight for the surface. And a dry fly typically kind of represents the sort of adult stage of an insect. You can just see here I've got a few more patterns in there, and you can keep your fly presented on the surface by using a floatant, which will allow it to present the way you want it to do. Okay, so we've got a dragonfly sort of pattern here designed to imitate a dragonfly, and you can see at the back we've got a sort of quite a few strands of deer hair that have been kind of bucked together, which is a good buoyant material. Next we've got a sort of midge pattern here, and you can see the sort of grey sort of feathers which represent the wings. That is material known as CDC, and that is again, it's a very buoyant material for dry flies. Apologies, this footage isn't super clear, but you can probably just about make it out. And sometimes you can get wet fly patterns that are designed to look almost like dry fly. So you can see here we've got some pheasant tail kind of legs that have been tied in a knot to represent almost like a kind of Jenny long legsy type fly that would maybe be on the surface. Next we have the traditional wet fly, which is probably for me the most commonly used type of fly that I use. And these are kind of sitting in the water column just below the surface, and they either imitate a sort of drowned insect or something that is emerging or sort of making its rise to the surface. Often these are fished on the swing, and you would let the current carry them across a river. Wet flies are the kind of, like I say, the more traditional type of fly, and the materials that are in there allow them to sort of get below the surface. You'll also notice that the eye of the hook tends to point downwards to allow you, when you're stripping the line through, it will keep the fish going below, sorry, not the fish, the fly sitting below the surface. The hackles that are used and the sort of wing patterns also help pull that down, and you can weight a wet fly down as well to achieve sort of different depths within the water. You can also use a sinkant. In terms of lines, you can use really floating, inter or sinking lines with a wet fly, and these come in a range of different sizes, typically from about 10 or 12 up to about 18. Now my all-time favourite fly, I think, has got to be the black pennel. It is super simple. It's got a golden pheasant tail that adds a little bit of orange to it, and then the rest of the fly is predominantly black with some silver ribbing. I don't know how many trout I've caught in this fly. I like to use it just standard like this, but also like to use variants. You can see here I've got the gold bead on it and an oversized hackle to help it get down a little bit deeper. Sometimes that can be really useful in sort of cooler conditions, but the black pennel, probably my favourite fly. Next we've got the black spider, another really effective fly, particularly for trout. Again, this is something that's suited to kind of more smaller sort of hooks, but really simple, black hackle, black floss body, no tail, and it's designed to imitate just a simple spider in the water. Next up, we've got the teal, blue and silver. Now this is a traditional wet fly, but it also has that sort of baitfish imitation. It's got its dark wing, sparkling silver body, blue hackle, and also the tail, really good for sea trout. We've got a little claret here, I don't know if that's the right name for it, but this is another effective one. There's a little flash of red and the orange tail, again a really effective fly. And then finally the Alexandra, we've got the kind of pearlescent sort of peacock kind of wings, flash of red and then the flash of silver. This can be really effective too. Next on the list we have nymphs. Now dry flies imitate adult flies, dry flies represent rising flies, nymphs sort of represent the kind of early life of sort of an aquatic insect. So these will typically be found kind of streaming about the bottom of the river or the lake, and they're designed to kind of represent the very, very initial early stages of that fly. These are typically found to be a kind of heavier fly. They'll be weighted to get themselves down to the bottom, so they can be weighted either with like a kind of gold bead or sort of wire or kind of lead sort of under the pattern of the fly when the fly's been tied to get you down there. Now these can be effective because when these insects are at the nymphal stage, they can't generally swim or kind of move about as much, so they generally do sort of just let the current carry them. So they're kind of easy picking for fish, and it is their natural sort of food that they'll always be feeding on below the surface. They come in a range of different weights and sizes, different patterns, and I'll talk to you about a few patterns just now. Starting off with the pheasant tail nymph, very simple pattern. It has a little flash near the head to create a bit of interest in the water. We've got the prince nymph, which is a very versatile sort of nymph that we use here in the UK. Very, very basic, again mostly made up of pheasant materials. Then we've got a sort of gold bug. That's what I call this, the gold bug. Again, this has a little bit of colour in it, which attracts attention. And finally, we've got this sort of little shrimp pattern, which is effective at kind of imitating little crayfish and shrimp at the bottom of the water. We have streamers, or I like to call them lures, that's what we call them here in the UK, or that's what I've always called them anyway. These are much bigger. These represent a baitfish more so than an actual fly, so these are designed to kind of create almost like a territorial type strike. Now you'll notice these flies are generally much bigger, there's a lot more going on, and the colours and the patterns are much more kind of bold and bright. Hook sizes are also much bigger as well. They kind of range from about sort of 8 to about 14. And a range of different materials are used. A lot of marabou, a lot of fritz, a lot of kind of sort of sparkling materials through the tails, a lot of beads, a lot of different things going on with these flies. So starting off with the fritz, this comes in a range of colours. So you see here I have an orange fritz, really good for stocked rainbow trout and sort of fisheries. Really good as well in murky water. We've got a pink fritz here, you can see the tail's been cut back a little bit, and there's some sparkle through the tail and a gold bead. And we've got an olive pattern here, again marabou tail, some gold flash through it, and we have a sort of glow in the dark bead, which is good for kind of in low light conditions or murky water. I don't quite know the name of this one, but this has also been quite effective. We've got a sort of fluorescent, sort of pearlescent body, white tail and yellow hackles, creates a lot of interest, particularly good for rainbow trout, and we've got a black streamer pattern here as well. Finally, we have salmon flies. Now I just want to start off by saying that I don't actually really do a lot of salmon fly fishing with these particular flies. I use more singles, but I thought they'd be worth showing. So salmon flies are predominantly bigger. Again, they're more imitated to create sort of like a baitfish type thing, and it's more of a territorial strike you're going to get from a salmon more so than a feeding. So you see here these flies are generally much bigger. We've got some double hooked patterns. There's also, you might see at the top of the box there, there's a little treble hook, which I wouldn't recommend. but I thought these would be worth showing you the sort of patterns of them. And just give you an idea. But as I say, these aren't flies, and you can see by the edge of this box, I don't particularly use these anymore, but I thought they'd be worthwhile showing you. Starting off with the Gary, you can see it's got a kind of combination of red, yellow and blue. Great fly for summer salmon. I've got a single here and a double. Really effective fly, mainly aimed at, like I say, salmon. Yeah. Then we've got the alley shrimp. This is a popular fly in Scotland. As you can see, I've got two different sizes here, and it's predominantly orange, tied with red thread. This is quite an effective fly, a lot of kind of golden pheasant in it too to create that orange tone. Then we've got a stoat's tail. This is another popular fly, black with a sort of yellow crest tail on it and a silver body. Then we have the blue charm, another effective fly, tied on a double here. And then finally we've got a tube fly. Now you see this is quite a big tube fly. This would be used on a kind of spey or Scandi rod. If you've made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching. Hopefully this series has been useful for you and given you some kind of basic foundation knowledge of fly fishing and given you enough to go and make a start. If you've enjoyed these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. As you can see here, most of the people watching the videos aren't actually subscribers, so it would go a long way and really help the channel grow if you could subscribe. If you've got any questions about anything at all, please feel free to leave a comment in the comments box and I will get back to you. And I'm going to get started on the next series now. I think I'm going to do a little bit of introduction to fly tying, because that would be a nice way to follow on from the fly fishing series. But anyway, I'd like to thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.